Hello everyone and welcome to the Life Lessons channel. Today, we will explore the principles in Buddhism that help overcome fear and suffering. These are feelings that any of us experience at times. But before we begin, ask yourself, is there a way to face these fears and pains without being overwhelmed by them? Yes, the Buddha has shown us a path that leads to peace and liberation. Today, we will uncover these secrets together. Accepting fear, facing pain. The Buddha teaches that fear and suffering are unavoidable parts of life. They are a natural part of existence. When we avoid them, we only create more pressure for ourselves. However, if we learn to accept and confront them, fear and suffering will no longer control our lives. This can be difficult. But it is through facing them that we find our own strength. Living in the present moment. One of the deepest lessons the Buddha teaches is to fully live in the present moment. Most of the fears and sufferings we endure stem from living in the past or worrying about the future. The Buddha taught that, only today, only now. When we are not haunted by the past or anxious about the future, our minds become lighter, and our pain diminishes. Letting go, releasing negative emotions. In life, we often cling to negative emotions like anger, regret, or fear. The Buddha teaches that all suffering comes from attachment. When we do not let go of these emotions, we cause ourselves suffering. Learn to recognize these feelings and let them pass like waves in the ocean. Only by letting go can we find true freedom and peace. Compassion, spreading love. The Buddha always emphasized that compassion is not only caring for others but also nurturing oneself. When you do good deeds and spread love to those around you, your pain will gradually lessen. Compassion is one of the most powerful remedies for healing the wounds of the soul. Enlightenment, clear awareness of the nature of life. Finally, the path to overcoming suffering is enlightenment. The Buddha teaches that enlightenment is not only understanding the nature of existence but also profound self-awareness. When we clearly perceive life and the nature of suffering, we are no longer controlled by them. Enlightenment helps us overcome all challenges in life and live in peace. Dear friends, as the Buddha taught, suffering and fear are unavoidable in life, but we have the choice of how to overcome them. With Buddhist principles such as acceptance, living in the present, letting go, compassion, and enlightenment, each of us can find the path to true peace and happiness. Remember, enlightenment is not a destination but a journey, a path that each of us must persistently follow. If you find this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more valuable lessons from Buddhism. Thank you for watching, and I wish you peace and the freedom of the soul. Please leave a comment below if you would like to share your thoughts, and don't forget to follow the Life Lessons channel to continue exploring the secrets of life through the teachings of Buddhism. Principle 1: Accepting and confronting fear, the path to peace. In life, fear is an inevitable part. From fear of the future, anxiety about things that haven't happened, to the fear of death. These fears are natural emotions that we cannot completely avoid. However, according to the teachings of the Buddha, fear is not something we need to run away from. Instead, we need to confront, accept, and find ways to master it. Accepting fear does not mean we are weak or failing, it is a crucial step on the journey toward peace and liberation. 1. Fear is a natural response. To better understand why fear arises in life, we need to look at its nature. The Buddha taught that fear is part of ignorance of the mind, meaning a lack of understanding of the true nature of everything in life. When we do not recognize the impermanence of all things, our minds react with worry and fear. Fear is a natural human reaction to uncertainty or danger. In the past, fear may have been a factor that helped humans survive. Worrying about potential dangers keeps us alert and helps us make safe decisions. However, in modern society, this fear often no longer relates to actual dangers we face. Instead, we fear unclear situations, changes in life, or even inner insecurity. Therefore, sometimes fear does not reflect a real threat but is merely a product of the mind. 2. Confronting fear is the path to self-understanding. One of the important teachings that the Buddha imparted is knowing oneself. When we confront our fears, it becomes an opportunity to understand ourselves better. The Buddha did not encourage fleeing from our emotions but rather accepting and observing them objectively. When we feel afraid, instead of immediately reacting or trying to avoid it, we can pause and ask ourselves, where does this feeling come from? Why do I feel this way? This practice helps us clearly recognize the nature of our fear and uncover its deeper causes. It could be a painful memory from the past, a lack of self-confidence, or an invisible fear of the future. Every time we confront and understand the source of our fear, we are no longer controlled by it and can learn to overcome it. 3. Accepting fear does not mean surrendering. When we talk about accepting fear, it does not mean we have to accept it as an unchangeable condition or see it as an inherent part of ourselves. The Buddha taught that everything is impermanent, and this includes emotions like fear. When we accept fear, we do not have to compromise or surrender to it. In fact, this acceptance is what helps us break free from its control. Acceptance can be a powerful act. It does not mean resigning or ignoring fear. On the contrary, it is an acknowledgement that we can control our responses to fear rather than letting it dictate our actions and decisions. When we accept that fear is part of being human, we no longer feel guilty or ashamed of these emotions. Instead, we can face them with calmness and confidence. 4. Focus on the present to alleviate anxiety. One of the key principles in the Buddha's teachings is living in the present. Fear often stems from anxiety about the future or regret about the past. The Buddha taught that if we can let go of the past and not fear the future, we can live a peaceful and free life. When we confront fear, maintaining focus on the present moment can help alleviate anxiety. Practicing mindfulness is an effective method to help us fully engage in the present moment. When we focus on our breath, each step we take, and what is happening around us, fear will no longer dominate our minds. This is a way to bring our souls back to peace and stillness. 5. True liberation comes from within. The Buddha taught that all suffering and fear stem from desires and attachments. We fear loss, fear change, fear the lack of control over our lives. But what the Buddha emphasizes is that true liberation comes from letting go of these desires. When we stop clinging to external things and accept that everything is impermanent, we will find true freedom. Therefore, instead of just avoiding or fighting against fear, the Buddha encourages us to learn to accept and view it objectively. By doing so, we will see that fear no longer has the power to control us. And that is the path to peace and liberation. Accepting and confronting fear is not easy, but it is the path to liberation. The Buddha has shown us that fear is not a bad thing or something unavoidable, it is an opportunity for us to understand ourselves and the world around us better. When we learn to accept fear and confront it with understanding and compassion, we will find peace and freedom in life. Remember, fear is not an enemy but a teacher, helping us grow and discover the hidden strength within each of us. Embrace it and learn from it, and you will find that in those moments of facing fear, you will discover true liberation and peace. Principle 2, Living in the Present, the path to liberation from anxiety and suffering. In our busy modern lives, we often get caught up in worries about the future or are haunted by past events. Feelings of anxiety about what has not yet happened, regrets about what has passed, frequently leave us in a state of unrest. However, according to the teachings of the Buddha, the key to overcoming these feelings is to live fully in the present moment. Living in the present is not only a method to reduce anxiety, but also a path to peace and liberation from suffering. 1. The difference between the present, past, and future. To understand the importance of living in the present, we need to clearly distinguish between the three time frames we often inhabit: the past, the present, and the future. The past is gone and cannot be changed, the future has not yet arrived and is uncertain. Neither of these is something we can control in this very moment. The Buddha teaches that when we cling to the past, we are merely living in regret, remorse, or even resentment. Thoughts about what has happened can not only change reality but also burden us with negative emotions such as sadness and anger. Similarly, when we worry about the future, we chase after the unknown, creating invisible fears. The future is uncontrollable, and worrying about it only exhausts us. In contrast, only the present is something we can truly grasp. We can fully experience this moment. Savor everything as it unfolds, and feel the tranquility and peace that the present offers. The Buddha advises us to focus on each living moment, for that is where truth resides. 2. Mindfulness. Focusing on the present. One of the core practices in Buddhist teachings to live in the present is mindfulness. Mindfulness can be simply understood as full attention to the current moment without judgment or distraction. Practicing mindfulness is not just about sitting in meditation. It is a way of living where we are fully aware of what is happening right now. When we practice mindfulness, we don't merely observe our feelings, thoughts, and actions without getting attached to them. Instead of letting thoughts about the past or worries about the future dominate us, we simply acknowledge and feel the present without judgment. This is the path to freeing ourselves from anxiety and suffering. For example, when you eat, focus on each bite, savor the flavors, aromas, and textures of the food. When you walk, feel each step, the contact of your feet with the ground. This way, you are no longer swept away by worries, but are focused on what is happening right now. 3. Impermanence and letting go of anxiety. Living in the present does not mean we live without worries or neglect the future. The Buddha did not teach that we should live irresponsibly or without plans. In fact, the Buddha teaches that awareness of the impermanence of everything is crucial for living fully in each moment. Everything in life changes, and nothing lasts forever, including our anxieties and sufferings. When we understand this impermanence, we can face worries, fears, and even successes or failures with greater ease. If we live with the awareness that everything can change, we will not let negative emotions linger and dominate our lives. This understanding will help us free ourselves from painful feelings, no longer worrying about the future or regretting the past. 4. Liberation from attachment and letting go. An important part of living in the present is learning to let go. The Buddha teaches that suffering often arises from attachment and clinging to things we cannot control. When we focus too much on external matters like money, careers, relationships, or success, we easily fall into states of anxiety and fear when these things may be lost or changed. To live fully in the present, we need to learn to let go of things we cannot hold on to forever. Letting go does not mean indifference, rather, it is accepting that everything has its birth and death, its coming and going. When we no longer cling to these things, we will feel free and at peace. Try to relax your mind and let things flow naturally instead of trying to control everything. 5. The benefits of living fully in the present. When we live in the present, we begin to sense peace without needing to seek it externally. This peace is not something we can buy or achieve through material success, but rather a state of inner freedom built through living with full awareness in each moment. Each fully lived moment is an opportunity for us to find true freedom. Moreover, living in the present helps us more easily overcome suffering and anxiety. When we are not caught up in worries about the future or regrets about the past, we can more clearly appreciate what we have and the opportunities that the present offers. It is in these moments that enlightenment and peace will come to us. Living in the present is not a distant theory but a practical method that helps us reduce suffering and anxiety. When we know how to fully engage with the present moment, free from thoughts of the past or future, we will discover true freedom, peace, and happiness. The Buddha taught, live in this moment, for it is the precious gift that life gives us. When you learn to live in the present, you not only liberate yourself from fear but also discover a life of tranquility and meaning. Principle 3, not clinging to emotions, the path to freedom from suffering and fear. In our daily lives, emotions are an essential part of being human. We experience a wide range of emotions. From joy and happiness to anxiety, fear, and suffering. However, what many people fail to realize is that clinging to these emotions is a primary cause of suffering. The Buddha taught that when we do not cling to our emotions, we can free ourselves from fear and suffering, allowing us to live a life that is light, free, and peaceful. 1. Clinging is the cause of suffering. Emotions, whether joyful or sorrowful, happy or painful, do not last forever. They come and go like waves in the ocean. The problem arises when we begin to cling to these emotions, identifying them as part of ourselves and allowing them to dictate our lives. The Buddha taught that clinging is one of the fundamental causes of suffering. When we cling to happiness, fearing its loss, or when we are engulfed by sorrow and unable to escape, we only increase our own suffering. Emotions are merely temporary reactions to circumstances, but when we perceive them as permanent realities, we fall into a state of pain. We cannot control our circumstances and emotions if we do not recognize that everything is impermanent and ever-changing. Only by letting go can we truly find peace. 2. Emotions are not who we are. One of the important teachings of the Buddha is that emotions are not our true selves. We are not our fears, our pain, or the other negative emotions we experience. These emotions are simply temporary experiences reflecting a transient mental state in a specific context. When we realize that they are merely external events and not us, we can let them go more easily. A simple way to understand this is to visualize a storm. When a storm is raging, it can be intense and create unrest. However, the storm is not the entire world. It is just a natural phenomenon that will eventually pass. Emotions are the same. When we confront our emotions, instead of being swept away by them, we can recognize that they are just a psychological storm that will pass. This awareness helps us avoid clinging to our emotions, thereby reducing suffering. 3. Letting go does not mean indifference. Letting go does not mean we abandon or disregard our emotions. In fact, letting go is about accepting our emotions without becoming attached to them. This can be likened to watching clouds drift across the sky. We do not need to chase the clouds or hold on to them, we simply allow them to pass and relax. When we do not cling to our emotions, we not only feel lighter but also have the ability to face situations with greater calm and equanimity. The Buddha taught that emotions come and go like waves, you cannot stop them. But you can learn not to let them disturb your peace. Letting go allows us to return to our natural state of mind, free from the entanglements of negative thoughts and emotions. When emotions arise, simply acknowledging them without getting swept away allows us to master our feelings and mind. 4. Practicing letting go in daily life. One effective method for practicing letting go is mindfulness. A core practice in Buddhism. Mindfulness is being fully present in the moment without judgment or interference. When we practice mindfulness, we do not allow thoughts about the past or future to dictate our emotions. Instead, we live fully in the present moment, accepting all the emotions we experience without clinging to them. For example, when you feel anxious, instead of immediately reacting by becoming overwhelmed or trying to avoid that feeling, try pausing for a moment to observe your emotions. Where is this feeling of anxiety coming from? Is it really as frightening as you think? Just recognizing that this feeling is a temporary reaction can help you feel much lighter. Practicing letting go not only alleviates suffering but also fosters awareness and freedom. You will find that when you do not cling to your emotions, you can live freely, unconfined by negative thoughts and feelings. 5. freedom comes from letting go. Ultimately, true freedom comes from letting go. When we do not cling to our emotions, we are not bound by anxiety, fear, or suffering. In fact, the Buddha taught that suffering is not an unavoidable part of life but a result of clinging to things we cannot control. When you learn not to cling to emotions, you will feel liberated from the constraints of the mind. You will no longer feel stressed or anxious when facing difficulties and will easily find peace in each moment. Letting go is not about giving up or being indifferent, it is about accepting and understanding that emotions are temporary reactions, not our true nature. When we learn not to cling to emotions, we not only reduce suffering but also cultivate freedom, peace, and awareness in our lives. The Buddha taught that only by letting go can we free ourselves from all suffering and find true peace within our hearts. Principle 4, Doing Good and Compassion, the Path to Inner Peace. In Buddhist teachings, compassion is not only a noble virtue but also a path to liberation. Compassion is not just for others. It is the key to alleviating our own pain and fear. The Buddha taught that doing good and practicing compassion not only benefits those around us but also brings tranquility and peace to our own souls. It is a way to live a peaceful life amidst the storms of modern existence. 1. What is compassion and why is it important? Compassion, in Buddhism, is not just ordinary love. It is the understanding and sharing of another's pain without expecting anything in return. This virtue arises from wisdom and a deep understanding of the impermanence of life and the interconnectedness of all beings. Compassion is not pity or weakness. It is a conscious action to reduce the suffering of others. The Buddha taught that all beings have their own suffering, and when we show compassion towards them, we create a sacred connection with everyone around us. Compassion not only helps others overcome their pain but also helps us alleviate our own mental suffering. 2. Compassion as a healing power. Have you ever felt lonely or afraid when facing difficulties in life? In those moments, doing good and expressing compassion can be a healing balm for your own soul. When you help others, whether through kind words, thoughtful gestures, or simply listening, you not only soothe their pain but also help yourself feel lighter and at peace. Buddhism teaches that compassion can ease not only physical pain but also emotional suffering. When you do good, you create positive energy and a sense of peace that both you and those you encounter can feel. This is part of healing. When you share it, you receive tranquility in return. 3. Compassion for yourself. Sometimes, we focus so much on helping others that we forget to care for ourselves. However, according to the Buddha's teachings, practicing compassion should also be directed towards ourselves. When you learn to love and care for yourself, you can then extend that love and compassion to those around you. We cannot help others if we are not healthy and at peace ourselves. Compassion for oneself means accepting and confronting our weaknesses and shortcomings without judgment or self-blame. The Buddha taught that it is only when we truly understand and love ourselves that we can unconditionally love and help others. 4. Compassion as the connection among all beings. One important lesson from the Buddha is the interconnectedness of all beings. Each of us has our own pain, but when we express compassion, we not only alleviate others' suffering but also create a deeper connection with those around us. Love and compassion are the invisible threads that bind us all together. When you do good, you bring peace not only to others but also to yourself. Buddhism teaches that the connection among all beings is inseparable. When we do good, we contribute to creating a better world. And each good deed is a building block for a peaceful and harmonious society. Practicing compassion is not just about helping others, it is also a way to express understanding, empathy, and shared suffering. 5. Doing good as the path to liberation. In Buddhist teachings, doing good is not a temporary act but a way of life. The Buddha taught that the path to enlightenment is paved with good deeds and the cultivation of the heart and compassion. When we do good, We not only create merit for ourselves but also help create a better world for everyone. Every small act of kindness has immense value. A compliment, a helping hand, or a kind smile can change someone's day, and sometimes that's all we need to ease suffering in life. These acts of kindness not only benefit the recipient but also bring tranquility and serenity to our own souls. 6. Compassion as the key to overcoming fear and suffering. Finally, compassion is the key to overcoming fears and suffering in life. When we practice compassion, we not only soothe others' pain but also free ourselves from anxiety and fear. Love and compassion are the strengths that help us overcome challenges without sinking into sadness or suffering. When you do good and express compassion, you create change not only for yourself but for the world around you. Small acts, filled with love, can help reduce suffering in life, bring peace to the soul, and illuminate rays of hope in darkness. Compassion and doing good are essential parts of the Buddhist path. When we practice compassion, we not only lessen the suffering of others but also achieve tranquility and peace within ourselves. Compassion is the pathway to liberation from pain and fear, helping us see the interconnectedness of all beings and find true happiness in life. Start with yourself, do good, express compassion, and you will experience the peace and happiness that the Buddha taught. Principle 5, Cultivating the Mind and Seeking Enlightenment, the Path to Spiritual Freedom. In Buddhism, enlightenment is not just a mental state but also a path to liberation from attachment to negative emotions such as fear and suffering. Enlightenment is the deep understanding of the nature of life, impermanence, and the nature of suffering. The Buddha taught that when we clearly recognize ourselves and the world around us, we are no longer bound by the pains of life. Instead of worrying, fearing, or being engulfed in emotions, we can live in a state of freedom, tranquility, and peace. 1. What is enlightenment? Enlightenment is not an abstract or mystical concept, but rather a clear and profound awareness of the nature of everything around us. In Buddhist teachings, enlightenment is the understanding of three fundamental characteristics of existence. Impermanence, everything changes; suffering, pain is an unavoidable part of life; and non-self, there is no eternal self. When we grasp these truths, we no longer feel oppressed by fear or suffering but can live with ease and peace. Enlightenment is not a destination but a process. It is a gradual awakening where we slowly free ourselves from negative thoughts and emotions, gaining insight into the true nature of life and ourselves. Enlightenment is awakening from ignorance, recognizing impermanence, and letting go of unnecessary attachments. 2. Cultivating the mind as a first step to enlightenment. Cultivating the mind is not a separate or isolated task. It is a continuous process. To achieve enlightenment, we need to nurture our minds, abandon negative habits, and replace them with noble qualities such as compassion, wisdom, and mindfulness. The Buddha taught that our minds are like a field, and the act of cultivating the mind is akin to sowing good seeds to develop a pure and wise soul. Cultivating the mind is not just an external action but also an internal transformation. When we focus on purifying our minds, we can recognize our emotions, thoughts, and actions without being swept away by them. This helps us distance ourselves from negative feelings like fear, anger, or sadness, replacing them with peace and awareness. 3. Understanding the nature of suffering. To achieve enlightenment, we need to have a clear understanding of the nature of suffering. The Buddha pointed out that suffering is an unavoidable part of life. However, it is important that we do not view suffering as something bad or something to avoid. Instead, we should see suffering as an opportunity to learn and grow. When we understand that suffering arises from attachment and craving, we can change how we confront it. In Buddhism, suffering is not something permanent or unchangeable. It can change when we alter our perceptions and responses. Enlightenment helps us realize that suffering is not an inherent quality of life but a result of attachment to impermanent things. When we let go of that attachment, suffering gradually dissipates. 4. Overcoming fear through enlightenment. Fear is one of the strongest feelings we face in life. However, fear cannot be easily erased if we do not understand its nature. The Buddha taught that fear often arises from ignorance and attachment to uncertainty. When we have a clear understanding of the nature of existence, we will no longer fear what we cannot control. Enlightenment helps us recognize that everything in life is changing and impermanent. We may not be able to control everything, but we can control how we respond to it. When we no longer cling to uncertainty, fear will find no refuge in our minds. This allows us to live freely, unburdened by anxiety or fear. 5. Enlightenment as the path to spiritual freedom. Enlightenment is not just theoretical knowledge about life, it is the path to spiritual freedom. When we clearly understand the nature of suffering and fear, we can transcend them easily. Enlightenment allows us to detach from illusions and unrealistic expectations, instead living in the present. Accepting what is happening without judgment or resistance. Spiritual freedom comes from not being bound by negative emotions such as fear, anger, or sadness. When we achieve enlightenment, we are no longer influenced by external factors but instead live in peace and equanimity. This is the liberation the Buddha spoke of, liberation from all attachments. Liberation from suffering and fear. Enlightenment is the path to true peace. Enlightenment is not a fixed destination but a journey. This journey helps us gain a deeper understanding of life and enables us to live freely and peacefully in every circumstance. When we cultivate the mind and seek enlightenment, we not only free ourselves from fear and suffering but also spread peace and happiness to those around us. Remember, enlightenment is not about perfection or an easily attainable result. It is a process of learning, nurturing, and awakening. But when you attain enlightenment, you will experience a priceless freedom, freedom from worries, freedom from fear, and freedom from suffering. Enlightenment is the path to true peace and happiness in life. Conclusion: the path to overcoming fear and suffering according to Buddhism. Dear friends, as we reflect on life, we see that fear and suffering are unavoidable. However, the Buddha taught that instead of denying or avoiding these feelings, we can learn to face and overcome them. The path to peace is not always easy. But by applying the principles of Buddhism that we've explored together, each person can gradually discover spiritual freedom, tranquility, and peace. The Buddha does not promise a life free of suffering, but he shows us how not to be swept away by pain and fear. By living in the present, avoiding attachment to negative emotions, practicing kindness and compassion, and continually seeking enlightenment, we can transform our suffering into strength and understanding. First, facing our fears is a crucial step. When we dare to confront and not shy away from our fears, we find they no longer have the power to control our minds. This doesn't mean we won't feel fear, rather. It means we won't allow fear to dictate our lives. When we clearly understand the nature of impermanence and suffering, we recognize that all emotions are natural transitions. And they will pass if we don't cling to them. Living in the present is the key to overcoming anxiety and fear. When we focus on the current moment, we can find calm and peace even amid life's challenges. Instead of living in anxiety about the future or regret about the past, let your mind be free and unburdened. Moreover, letting go of attachment to emotions and uncertainties is an essential part of this process. When we learn not to get caught up in negative feelings, we free ourselves from pain and find inner freedom. Compassion and acts of kindness are also indispensable. When we act with compassion, we not only help others but also aid ourselves in overcoming fear and suffering. Compassion opens our hearts, allowing us to see the connection between all beings, leading us to live with peace in our souls. Finally, enlightenment is not a destination but a journey. With each step, whether slow or fast, we move closer to spiritual freedom and tranquility. Enlightenment helps us understand the nature of suffering and fear, transforming them into opportunities for growth and development. So, if you find this video helpful and wish to continue your journey toward peace, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. We will continue to share valuable lessons from Buddhism to help you find a path to a calm and free life. Wishing you always peace, serenity, and tranquility in every step of your life.